afternoon. My name is Janelle Barrett. May I have your name, please?
Nikki Mullins.
Okay, Miss Mullins, I'm the final accounts manager here at Barrett's Bouquet. You mind telling me one fun fact about yourself?
One fun fact about myself is that I like online shopping.
Oh, girl, me too. Alright, today we're here for me to train you how to fill out the meal and taxi allowance form. Have you ever done anything like that before?
No, I haven't.
Alright, you don't need to worry. So by the end of this, you should be able to identify the different type of allowances there is. You should be able to calculate the different allowances, and you should also be able to fill out the form on your own. If you have any questions though, you can always ask me and you get any clarity that you need. This is the meal and taxi allowance form. This form we usually use it at the end of the financial year when you're working overtime, so you don't have to come out of pocket for your taxi fare and any meals that you need after the working hours, or any refreshments that you work during that time frame. So this is the form itself. Are you able to see the form?
Yes.
Are you able to? Okay, Nikki, so this is the meal and taxi allowance form, right? So the payee would have been, for example, me, because I'm using myself as an example right now, right? So my name, and then the description, because it's the end of financial year, we're going to just use that as end of financial year activities. Right, and then we're going to put down the specific days that it is during the week and on the weekends that would have worked. So say for example I worked today, which is the 12th, today is the 13th of August, right? So today is a weekday, right? So it would have been the 12th of the 8th, 2025, right? That would have been one working day. And say for example I would have worked this coming Saturday, which would have been the 16th, right? So it would have put that on the section that says Saturdays or Sundays, which would have been a weekend. So you put the 16th of the 8th, 2025. This form, it's supposed to have any amount of days or instances that you would have worked beyond the normal working hours or overtime during the week or on weekends. But just for example purposes, I'm going to show you one instance of both, right? So that would have taken care of this section to discuss or to identify the days that you would have worked overtime. So during the week you'd have qualified for one taxi allowance, right? Where I live in Portmore, so the rate for Portmore would have been $2,000, right, for taxi allowance during the week. And it wouldn't be one, my apologies, it wouldn't be one instance, it would have been one instance during the week and two on weekends, because you get two taxis to come on Saturdays and Sundays or on the weekend. So that would have been the one plus two, which would have made three instances, right? Alright, and then so that would be three instances for your taxi allowance, right? Then your meal allowance, since it is during the week, you'd get the meal allowance, right? So that would be one instance of meal allowance, right? And then that would be at a rate of $950. However, on the weekend you get refreshment, which is the same amount as the meal allowance, but because it's the weekend we call it refreshment instead of meal. So that's one instance from refreshment, and that's at the same $950, right? So what we're going to do now is to calculate the total rates for each of the allowances. So the taxi allowance would have been 3 times the $2,000, right? You can see?
6,000.
Right, you're understanding so far, right, Miss Mullins?
Yes.
So it would be 6,000. Remember to ask if you're not understanding, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the meal allowance, which would have been one instance, would have been 1 times the 950, and which would have still only been 950. And then it would be same thing for the refreshments. It would have been only been one instance, so it would have been the same 950, right? What you're going to do now is to calculate the amounts vertically to get the grand total right here. So that it would have been the 6,000 plus the 950 plus another 950, which should have given you a grand total of $7,900, right? Here, you just simply, so that would take up the computation of the allowances, right? So now I'm just going to put my address. So my address is Gortuka, Greater Portmore, St. Catherine. Right? So this would have been the address that they have on file for me, and so on, right? And then all I'd have to do now, since we have correctly filled out the form, what we would do is to just go ahead and print the form. So you send it to the printer is right here. Right? And then there's a line at the bottom here, like you can see it on the computer screen as well, that you'd sign to say, you prepared it. Alright, and then I would hand it off to my supervisor. However, you would hand it off to me for me just to check the dates and make sure that everything is okay, and I would then send the information to payments for them to pay your amount that's due to you. You want to give it a try for yourself?
Sure.
Okay, Miss Mullins, now it's your turn to try out filling out the form. So go ahead.
At first, you said the payee should be my name.
Right. Yes, that's correct.
And the description. What do you say in the description again?
It should be end of financial year activities.
During the week. Should I work one day during the week on like August 7th? That's just one day.
Yeah, that's one day.
And on Sundays.
Yeah,
Should I work
you can use a Sunday.
Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
For taxi allowance. So I work during the week one day.
Mm-hmm.
And you said on weekdays, on weekends, it's 2 times for the taxi allowance.
Right. So it will be during the week you work Monday to Friday, you get one, because it's you would have been home by this already. So you'd have gotten the money just to go home. However, on the weekend, which would have been Saturday or Sunday, you actually get 2 taxi fares, both to come to work and to go home, because you're not really expected to be at work. So for the weekend it will be 2 per day, 2 instances of the taxi.
Okay, so that's 2 plus 1 is 3 in total.
Right.
And what was the rate again? 2,000?
Where do you live? Because it's based on where you live. So you live in Portmore, so the rate would have been 2,000.
The meal allowance is just during the week, so that's just one day.
Right.
And the rate is 950.
That's correct.
However, the meal and you stated that the meal and the refreshment is the same thing, plus the same rate. It's just that one is during the week and one is the weekend.
That's correct.
So that's one. Number of occasions. So now I move on to calculating the rates, the total.
Right, so that would be you times the number of occasions by the rates, right, to get calculate the allowance. Mm-hmm.
That's 6,000.
Right.
And the meal allowance is 950. It's 950 also.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for the refreshment allowance.
Right.
Now moving on to the grand total, which is all of the totals.
Right, you add all your totals together.
That's 6,000 plus 950 plus 950.
Mm-hmm.
That's 7,900.
It is.
Moving on to traveling from this address.
Right, you know which address you should put there?
Traveling from, so that would be my address?
Yes, that would be your home address.
What more?
Mm-hmm. Right. Do you know what is the next step you should do?
Print it.
That's correct. You're doing wonderful.
So it should be, I should sign it right here.
Yes, you should.
And it to you.
Yes. Thank you. It seems correct so far. Okay, Miss Mullins, do you have any questions to ask?
Actually, I have one question. I actually wrote it down
Okay.
when we were presenting. What is the minimum hours that would make me qualify for overtime?
That is a great question. Okay, so the minimum hours to qualify for overtime, firstly, during the week, which would have been Monday to Friday, you would have been expected to be at work 8:30 to 5 p.m., right?
Yeah.
So overtime would have been any time after that, being 5 o'clock, and you'd have to do a minimum of 2 hours. So it is 5 to 7. You would at 7 p.m. you qualify for the allowance, right?
Yeah.
However, on the weekend you'd have to do a minimum of 4 hours in order to qualify for the allowance. You understand?
Yes, I know.
Do you have any more questions?
No, I know.
Okay, so just to do a brief wrap up or summary of what we did today, I introduced you to the meal and taxi allowance form. You can click it on the computer, please. Right, so I introduced you to the meal and taxi allowance form. I demonstrated it to you as well, as I also allowed you to go through the form and fill it out yourself, to just get a feel and to understand what it is exactly that we did. You would have been able to, by doing this and going through this training, you would have been able to list the different type of allowances that exist, which is the taxi allowance, the meal allowance, and the refreshment allowance. You would also be able to fill out the form, and you'd also be able to calculate the different amounts or rates based on whatever it is allowance that is applicable to you. Alright? Now my expectation of you going further, going into the future, is that when the end of financial year comes around and you're actually working your overtime or you're working beyond your normal working hours, you should be able to fill out this form on your own and give it to me to check in order for you to be paid by the payments. I'd just like to thank you, Miss Mullins, for your participation, and you came willing and able to learn, and it was a wonderful task to show you what was happening or show you how to fill out the form.